Good evening and welcome to Hello It's Us, Perspectives on Inclusion. This program is dedicated to educating the general public about issues that are important to the disability community, but we operate under the assumption that as you view these shows, you'll realize that they're important to everybody because after all, people with disabilities are a part of the general community. Hello It's Us is brought to you through a collaboration between the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development, our friends at Uptown Bill's Coffee Shop, and the good people at Public Access Television. My name is Mike Honig. I serve as a co-host for Hello It's Us, and I'm a program coordinator at the Center for Disabilities and Development. Keith?
My name is Keith Ruff. I'm the other co-host, and I'm a disability advocate, and in the process of writing a memoir.
It's almost there, I hear.
Yes.
Rumors has it. Well, for those of you that tuned in last week, we started our two-part series on Hancher and got a lot of information about the history and how it's moved forward, which was very exciting for all of us. And we're back filming at Hancher again, this time on stage. So this is a very exciting time for those of us who love Hancher, and we're excited to pass the message on to you. We're thrilled to be welcoming back Chuck Swanson, who's the Executive Director of Hancher. And those of you, we also are welcoming back Connie Tipsword, who is the Director of Patron Services, and Gary Sanborn, who is the sound and the audio engineer here at Hancher. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us again. We're going to really be focusing this show on accessibility features, although I think we're going to get into some other topics as well. We've had a lot of chance to get to know these wonderful folks and have a lot to talk about. And as those of you that tuned in to part one realize that accessibility for people with disabilities, and really for everyone, for all audience members, is a real priority of Hancher. And so Chuck is going to lead us off here in talking a little bit about accessibility and the impetus behind you making it such a priority.
Well, Mike and Keith, I want to welcome you to the Hadley stage, and I want you to know that we always say this is the best seat in the house. Mike, I really wish that you could see the beautiful lights, the beautiful seats. It is a very intimate theater. The original Hancher was 2,500 seats, and our new theater is 1,800 seats. And the chemistry between the audience and the artist is magical. We had an opening season with such rave reviews from the artists. Yo-Yo Ma loved performing here. Emmanuel Axe, pianist, he really just raved about the acoustics in the theater. Renee Fleming, an opera singer, she was just so pleased. And we have 3 Broadway shows, and both the artist backstage and the audience in the house, there again, that magic was just so all year long. Everybody was just enjoying it. And last week we talked about all the planning that went into making sure that Hancher was for everybody, that persons with disabilities could come and really enjoy and experience everything about a performance that it has to offer. And so I'm going to let Connie kind of kick off a little bit about some of the services as our disability coordinator that Hancher provides.
Great.
Okay. Well,
You're on, Connie.
basically, we'll provide whatever services we can provide that someone asks us to do. I think it's always important to have a conversation about what we can do, because maybe we can't do exactly what you thought you wanted, but if we talk about it, we can probably come up with something that works for everybody. And I think that's the important way to look at it, in the spirit of collaboration and seeing what we can do. One of the things that is a little different about this theater as opposed to the old Hancher, the areas where a seat could be removed for a wheelchair to sit in the old building were all in the back row. Now, we did have, we would help people transfer into an aisle seat if they were able to do that, but people who couldn't or didn't want to leave their wheelchair, it was a problem because the only place that they had to sit was in that back row. Well, I don't know if you can see it above, behind us here, but right in the center section, this back row of the front section, you see some gaps in the seats. And those are places for people to be right up close and personal, and also room for their accompanying people to sit with them. We also have the traditional seats in the back in all the different locations. But the other thing that's kind of fun, on the sides of the auditorium, we have gallery seating, and all of those are accessible as well. So, well, all of them. There are two that require a couple of steps, but on both sides, on both levels, there are accessible ones. So we think we've done a really good job with providing for people who have mobility disabilities. Elevators take you to every level, get you wherever you need to go, elevators and or ramps. One of the other really exciting things that we've done, and Gary will want to jump in with this a little bit as well, because he knows the technical side of it, but that's our hearing loop. In the old building, we had hearing augmentation units that worked on an infrared signal. There was a microphone in the hall, and it was sent through an FM radio signal, and we still have one of those for people who perhaps don't have their own hearing aid and would like to use one of those units. But we also have the new hearing loop technology. And we've had a lot of interesting feedback from people. People either really, really love that hearing loop, or it doesn't work for them at all. And I started trying to do some research to find out why, and I think I may have figured it out. Apparently, even though you have that T switch on your hearing aid, your audiologist has to set the hearing aid in order to be able to receive that signal.
I see.
So, if you've tried it and it didn't work, maybe talk to your audiologist and see if that has been set. Because once that's switched on, then it seems to work much better.
Interesting.
I have to give a little feedback from an audience member. I was at a presentation, it was a University of Iowa Staff Council meeting, and there was a woman who was sitting in the front, and I'd given a presentation about Hancher, and after the presentation, she gave a very emotional testimony, and a testimonial, and it was so wonderful. She talked about the Cleveland Orchestra this last year, and she said, Gary, because of the hearing loop, this was the first time she's ever enjoyed an orchestra.
Wow.
And did that ever make me happy?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I mean, that's you can't put a price tag on that, I guess.
That's
That's
right.
just,
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's my understanding that loop systems have been much more common in Europe. And we're a little behind here in this country with that. And I mean, I think the technology is, perhaps, 80 years old, but we've just, for some reason, we've been more reluctant in this country to adopt it. And so I think there are more hearing aids in, if you're European and you get a hearing aid over there, I think it's much more likely that your hearing aid is already set up to work that way. Or maybe the audiologists are probably just much more, knowing what to do, that everybody is going to want to use their telecoil. And but it's great, better late than never. And I have not spoken yet to a venue that has a loop installed where they just haven't been very pleased with the results.
So what feedback, Gary, have you had from audience?
Like I said on last week's show, I think it's good. Usually I only hear things when there's problems, and so I'm kind of glad when I don't hear things. Mostly just, there's been a couple of users kind of like me, they want to know all the details of how things work, and the very astute listeners. And for a while, one of the nice things about our auditorium here is that a lot of flexibility is available in software, and so just like with the dressing room sound or the lobby sound, the the FM system, as Connie mentioned, and the new loop system, we can select the sources. And so I think for one show, Chuck, a gentleman said, it was really good, the loop, but it sounded a bit like it was coming from a microphone, and I couldn't quite figure that out, and it was. And because it was in the software set as mic only, and we have a setting for mix, which would come from, say, from the sound console, a mic, which would come from a microphone in the auditorium, or there's a mic mix setting which will change it automatically, so which is where I've got it set now. So it's just comments like that where people kind of wanted to know, hey, this is very good, but I want to know more details about how it works.
Well, and I think,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say that feedback is crucial because we are so much still trying to learn how to operate this building. It's so high-tech, and there's so many moving parts, and we're working as fast as we can, but any feedback you can give us is certainly helpful.
Things that I think is so neat about the loop, well, actually about both of those types of accommodations that you've talked about, the loop and then, and if I understand the loop correctly, that people that have the hearing aid can just switch that and may not even, do they, remind me, Gary, do they still have to check out a box, or can they literally, if they have can they literally switch it on and in some cases and go straight to their seat?
Yeah, great question, because the fact that we decided to install the loop system, I think the main reason that I keep hearing from hearing aid users or just people that want to use assisted listening in general is that, I don't know, the inconvenience perhaps of having to check out a receiver and headphones, or some people are embarrassed by it, understandably. They don't want to look like they've got something, they have to check out a special device. So I kind of have a yes and no answer to your question. And it really is as simple for a hearing aid user who, as Connie said, first of all, they have to have the T-coil on their hearing aid, and then apparently, as Connie said, it may have to be, say, implemented or something, activated by your audiologist. But then, yes, it is just a simple matter of changing it from the mic position, which is the normal position, to the T-coil position, and voila, if we are sending something through the wire in the floor, then it should work.
So my point, I'm glad I clarified that, because my point was going to be that one of the two accommodations you've described now will allow a patron to come in and go to a performance without really having to ask for a whole bunch of special stuff. They can go in, and with the loop, now they're able to access that, and by, instead of being segregated into a back row, and I mean, if they choose to go there, that's fine, but you're giving an option for people to sit alongside the rest of the theater goers. And as somebody who has in the past been in a situation where we've been, I went to a show once that provided audio description, but it was all the blind people sat in one place. It didn't feel very natural, and it didn't feel very comfortable. And so by enforcing or installing some of these accommodations, you've made it possible for people to go with their friends or family and just go see the show without making a big deal out of anything else.
But I think, Mike, along with that, I think that's all so good, but don't forget, as what Connie mentioned too, is that if there are things that we can do even better, don't ever hesitate to dialogue, because we do want to continue to strive and to do a better job. And as Connie said too, we're still learning about the building, and together, we can make it better.
This question is for any one of you. Since you opened, have you noticed a lot of patronage by people with varying disabilities?
Yeah, I
think
think
so.
we've had quite a few people, and I've had a couple of instances where people came to me not very happy about some situation, and I was able to talk with them and come up with a new plan and figure out how to make the experience better for them. My name, phone number, email address is all on the website. Please contact me anytime, ahead of time. You can also stop in at the concierge desk. If the usher there doesn't know how to answer the question, they'll radio me and have me come over and talk with you about whatever you need. If I can move on just a little bit to one of the really exciting things that we're trying for the first time ever. We always, in the old building, if we got a request to provide an ASL interpreter for people who are deaf, we would certainly do that if there was time to hire somebody and have them prepare to do a quality job. What we haven't ever done before that we're going to do for our Broadway season this year is we've just picked one performance of each of the shows, each of the 3 shows, and we're going to have ASL interpreters here.
3 of the Broadway shows.
3 of the Broadway shows. The Sunday matinee, if there is one of them there wasn't a Sunday matinee, so we're doing a Saturday matinee. We have held seats that are where they'll be able to easily see the interpreter, and we're hoping that we get people who want to come and use the service. It would be a shame to use resources on something that nobody has an interest in, but generally Broadway shows are the ones that we get the most interest in providing that service, so we're going to give it a shot and see what happens.
First one is The King and I, and Mike and I were talking about that show.
That's in October.
Yeah.
All right, tell us the other 2 while we're at it, so people can
The
start
other
planning
2
there.
are Motown the Musical in March and Kinky Boots
yep,
in April. So tickets are available now.
Shows you don't want to miss.
All right. I think, and Connie, you and I were having a little conversation about another service, which is audio description, which many people that are blind or low vision utilize. And unfortunately, fortunately, Hancher tried it in the past. Unfortunately, we didn't get the turnout that we'd hoped for. And so I guess just in general, what strategies, so we talk about trying to make sure that, people come here that can use an ASL interpreter. Are there specific strategies that you've adopted for advertising your accommodations and letting the disability community know that they're out there? I mean, obviously, I'll just stop and let you answer the question.
Well, we do have things on our website and in the brochure that goes out. It has a little bit of basic information about things. And then we just sort of expect people to talk to us. One of the things, to me, I touched on a little bit before, but it seems kind of silly for us to put a lot of resources into something that we think is going to be really helpful, only to then find out that nobody else thought it was a good idea. So we'd rather hear from y'all, what we can do that would be helpful, and then that's what we can focus our attention on. We did try audio description in the past. It was really in the infancy of that program, I guess you call it, and we just never could build an audience for it. And all of our trained describers eventually moved away, and so we decided at that point that if we got a request for it, we'd try and find a describer and make it happen. But that was 20 years ago, and nobody has ever asked. Although I do have a slightly interesting story to tell about the day that I met Mike Honig. I was at a little symposium on disabilities that was held here at, I can't remember, do you remember what the name of that?
Was that World Cafe, or did we know each other by then already?
No, it was, I can't remember, but it was people from all over the state, universities and colleges all over the state that came in for a little summit on disabilities. And it was lunchtime, and I was sitting at a table eating lunch, and a couple of people came in and sat down next to me. Right next to me was Mike. I introduced myself, told him where I worked, and he immediately said, "I have a bone to pick with you."
Oh, I did?
And I said, "Oh, good." What would be that bone?
It wasn't a chicken bone, was it?
"Why don't you offer audio description?" So then we had a conversation, and it turned out to be a great experience. But I did think it was funny that it started with, "Well, I have a bone." That I met Mike Honig. I was at a little symposium on disabilities that was held here at, I can't remember, do you remember what the name of that?
Was that World Cafe, or did we know each other by then already?
No, it was, I can't remember, but it was people from all over the state, universities and colleges all over the state that came in for a little summit on disabilities. And it was lunchtime, and I was sitting at a table eating lunch, and a couple of people came in and sat down next to me. Right next to me was Mike. I introduced myself, told him where I worked, and he immediately said, "I have a bone to pick with you."
Oh, I did?
And I said, "Oh, good." What would be that bone? And
It wasn't
he
a
said
chicken
to me,
bone, was it?
"Why don't you offer audio description?" So then we had a conversation, and it turned out to be a great experience. But I did think it was funny that it started with, "Well, I have a bone to pick
Boy,
with
that
you."
was a little harsh, wasn't it? Maybe
You said it in a nice way, though.
oh, good.
But you know, I was going to say, if Connie didn't already, we are prepared to do audio description in terms of equipment at least.
Yeah, she did, well, she told me that off air, I think.
You know,
so-
we have a second FM frequency and transmitters in both the main hall and the rehearsal hall, which we sort of call it casually, as well as enough receivers plenty of receivers for both systems. So we just need well, it's a lot of work, as I
It is a lot of
recall.
work.
I mean, for
Yeah.
somebody
Training, a lot of training,
just to prepare for the show and know it backwards and forwards, and to know what is going to happen before it happens, so that you can, be prepared to describe it. And it must be very labor intensive. And
So very forward thinking of you to have,
Yes.
have the technology in place, because that's obviously the first step. And
So our plan for now is that, much like we've always done with requests for an ASL interpreter, we ask for 30 days notice. If you give us that and request the audio description, we will attempt to find somebody who will bring somebody in to do it, but we do need that 30 days to give them time to learn the show. It's also better description if there are more than one performance, so that the describer can see an earlier performance or a rehearsal or something, and then they can describe it better and know when they can say things without it stepping on dialogue and things like that.
and that's another tricky part of it.
Yes.
Really, Patron Services has been such a part of Hancher's history. I remember with the hearing dog system, and Gary helped me out, I think it was it 1980? And Hancher, I think, was one of the first in the country to get the system.
Well, neither you or I were working here at
No,
that
but I
time,
remember
so you must
reading.
remember
I
reading it
remember
more than
reading
I do.
about
It was before me, because I
Yeah,
came
it
in
was before me,
1983,
too.
and you were 1984, I think.
Yeah.
So it had to have either been early 80s or late 70s at the
Yeah.
most, but I'd have to look.
I think it was around 80. And then audio description. We were one of the first. We
Yes, you
actually
were.
sent some of our staff to Washington, D.C. to be trained.
Well,
Thanks
and
to you,
we-
Mike, for, giving us the
The
plug there.
bone-picking thing?
And I remember, this is crazy, but customer service was so important to us that, when voicemail first came out, we weren't even going to do that. We were going to have, our secretary, our receptionist, still answer all the calls. So really, I think, I really pride ourselves in, we really want to try to take care of our patrons and really do the best job that we possibly can.
And one other quick note, well, I guess two quick notes of things that we get asked for all the time. It's a big building, especially for people who don't walk very easily. Maybe they don't use a wheelchair, but it's tough for them to go long distances. I now have 5 Patron Services wheelchairs.
All right.
So if you need a ride from your car to your seat, let us know. We can make that happen. And then speaking of your car, we have an accessible parking lot literally right next to the west side of the building. So steps from the door on that side, and then depending on the size of the audience and what we're expecting, there are a couple of other small lots just to the south of the building that we can also reserve as accessible parking if we think we need it. So
Thought of
So-
everything.
Yeah.
we tried. I'm sure there's something we've forgotten, but we tried.
So even graduations, we thought to have ramps, leading up to the stage so
Yeah.
graduates could graduate with their class in
Nice.
wheelchairs. And And I don't know, we have how many graduations a year, and
A lot.
but it's such a wonderful thing
Yes.
to be able to have everybody together. That is really important. And Connie, the box office you mentioned your number, but you will accept any calls or return any calls with special accommodations that are really needed. I
Absolutely.
think
And
that's
the box
really-
office is very helpful as
They're
well.
very helpful, too.
They know where
Yeah.
the seats are, and we do have accessible seats on every level in every price range. So
Great.
you just need to ask.
Do you, I asked this, I've had this personal experience on a number of occasions going to not to be named theaters, not Hancher, where I will request, for instance, the audio description receiver. And one of three things happens, and it's gotten better over time. That, obviously the best thing is that I get it, and they'll say, oh, the describer will be in such and such a time. What often happens is I get the assisted listening device, or thing number three that happens is I don't know what you're talking about. So I assume that you have some level. What kind of training do your ushers go to in terms of, if any, special training in terms of accommodating patrons with disabilities?
It's a challenge that we face on all levels of training the staff. We used to try and do it in an usher manual, and a number of years ago just figured out that just didn't work. So I now do a series of PowerPoint modules that are emailed out to them. They can go through it at their own pace, and then take a quiz on it later so that we know that they have done that. And one of those modules is on working with people who have disabilities.
Oh, great.
The other thing, basically, that I try really hard to do, because some people, try as I might, some people aren't very good about reading my training modules. Some people aren't very good about remembering them. And that is a little hard if you read it 6 months ago and then suddenly the question comes. On every level, not every single usher, but on every level, there's at least a person or two who has a radio who can get to me, and that concierge has a radio where they can immediately get to me and ask a question. So the biggest part of the training is, don't just say, I don't know, or no. Say, let me see if I can find that out for you. And if you ask somebody a question and you get a flat no or an I don't know, immediately say, can I talk to Connie? I'm here, and we'll get it worked out.
Nice.
And then we'll do some on-the-job training.
I really do think with the advances of high-tech, theater is natural for people with disabilities. I remember growing up when theater was not that great for them. People just didn't think it was worthwhile.
Luckily, things have changed,
Yeah.
Keith, very much, yeah.
Do you mean, Keith, in terms of people attending it or people participating in it, or both?
Coming from the East Coast, it was hard to get into it.
No.
Broadway show.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because there was a little resistance. Are you sure you want to go? Are you sure you're going to like it?
No, well,
And when there are that many barriers,
Yeah,
do you want to spend your money that way?
right.
So Keith, tell me, what was your favorite show in the original Hancher?
Cats.
You like cats, huh?
Yes.
Good.
That was a lot of
Good.
people's favorite show.
Yeah.
that's a wonderful show. Coming from Davenport, I didn't get to as many as I would want to, but I remember you did Will Rogers' Follies here once, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Did.
Yeah.
That was a fun show.
Yes,
Boy, you're bringing back the memories now. That was a long time
It
ago.
was a long time
with all
ago.
the dogs, I think.
One of my other favorites, and I don't know the name, but
Cirque du Soleil.
Yes,
We,
I love that.
Yeah, wow.
we did a Cirque-like show, but we also did Chinese acrobats or something,
Yeah, a couple
we've done a
times.
few things
Yeah,
like that that
yeah.
were pretty impressive.
Well, we want you both to come to Hancher often, and it's such a pleasure to get to meet both of you
Well, it's
and to be a part of your program.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, and I think this is both of our first, it's certainly my first venture on stage. It's quite a treat to be able to be here on stage, and I think
He's going to sing later.
Oh, yeah, ooh, that's scary. But we're coming quickly again to the end of our time here. This time I knew it would fly by, and it did. We have just a couple of minutes if anyone would like to just kind of, any final thoughts before we put a wrap on it?
Well, one thing that I would just like to add, I said that last week, but I just think it's important to remember that we want to continue to deliver the best service that we can deliver, and Connie's always available, Gary's always available, I'm available. It's the Hancher way. We really want to make Hancher for everybody. And so we want to make sure that everybody feels welcomed, that everybody loves their experience here, and that we will work as much as we can to make things even better.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, and thank you to all of you out there in TV and YouTube land that have tuned in, and thanks to all of our sponsors, and again, thank you for taking not only the time to be with us today, but all the prep work and to serving people with disabilities and to helping us put together a fun and great show. So, thank you so much.
Have a good week out there.